Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that, of course, I would commentate on the very interesting fight and surprisingly pay per view fight, or maybe in some of your eyes, not so surprisingly, a pay per view fight this weekend between Mr. Andrew Ruiz and Luis Ortiz. And I don't really believe that this fight is really worth that much of a pay per view. But all in all, I will be getting it because I do believe that it still is a very interesting fight. I'm not sure if this fight is really going to do super duper great on the numbers, but in my opinion, it is a very interesting matchup. I would also have to take a look at the undercard. But in my opinion, this fight not only overall is a very interesting fight, it's also going to be a very important fight, at least in my view. And the reason why it's going to be very important is because this is really going to determine who overall maybe was that fifth best heavyweight overall of this generation, at least debatably. Now, of course, some may even debate that, these two would not even be in that top five conversation for the past 10 years. I would say at number one, you would probably have to have Mr. Tyson Fury. At number two, you could debate anyone there. You could debate Alexander Usyk. You could debate Anthony Joshua. Now, some may say, now, why would you debate Anthony Joshua at number two? If Alexander Usyk was able to beat him twice, because just because Alexander Usyk was able to beat Anthony Joshua does not mean that he's going to be able to beat every other contender, but who the hell knows? But if you put Alexander Usyk there number two, I really don't have a problem with that. And then at number three, it pretty much would either be Anthony Joshua or Deontay Wilder. The only reason why I'm not really including Vladimir Klitschko is because by the time Vladimir Klitschko overall, was in the 2010s, either A, his reign, was kind of ended by Mr. Tyson Fury, or he was a little bit older, even though he still was a very decent champion. But if you wanted to put him at number two or number three, I wouldn't really have an issue with that either, when it came down to it. But when it comes to those top contenders, there is going to be an argument, at least there was a great amount of arguments, for who truly is just right behind them, who is the best contender within that division. And this oftentimes sparked arguments, especially when you came to the conversation between the Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fans. And they would usually talk about who is the best contender. And of course, the Deontay Wilder fans, in order to defend Deontay Wilder, they would say that Luis Ortiz is better than any opponent that Anthony Joshua had ever faced. And then, of course, overall, certain Anthony Joshua fans, they would probably say in return that Andy Ruiz was much better than Luis Ortiz, or Andy Ruiz alone is better or greater than a lot of the opponents overall that Mr. Deontay Wilder faced. But anyways, overall, we're going to talk about that in this video, and I'm also going to talk about who I believe is going to win this fight. Now, if you had to overall ask me, who do I personally believe is going to win this fight? I believe it's this Sunday. Overall, actually, not a Saturday, but I believe that it's this Sunday. Who do I personally believe is going to win this fight? I do have to personally go with Mr. Andrew Ruiz. Why am I going with Andrew Ruiz? Not only because Mr. Luis Ortiz is 43 years old, from what I remember at the current moment in time, and he isn't really getting any younger, obviously, when it comes down to it. But Mr. Andrew Ruiz, in my opinion, is just all around more skilled, and I think overall has a better skill set and is a better all around fighter than Mr. Luis Ortiz. And some of you may ask the question, well, if this was the same time, if this was the undefeated Luis Ortiz, would you pick him over Andrew Ruiz? Well, I think that if that fight were to happen, that it would be a little bit more of a 50-50 fight. But no, I would have not picked Luis Ortiz over Andrew Ruiz. And the reason why that is because I think Andrew Ruiz is better in a lot of categories. I think that he has better head movement. I think all in all that he has better defense. I think that he has way better stamina, even though overall, if you look at his body, he, of course, does look very flabby when it comes down to it. The only thing that I would really say that Luis King Kong Ortiz beats Andrew Ruiz in is footwork, at least with moving around the ring, and also punching power. That's really about it. Those are the only two categories that I truly believe that Luis Ortiz beats Andrew Ruiz in. Every other category, I would have Andrew Ruiz. Defense, head movement when it comes down to it, stamina, hand speed. I would have Andrew Ruiz pretty much beating him in every other category, and that's even if Luis Ortiz was at his 100% best. Now, is that me stating that Luis Ortiz, in my view, cannot win this fight? No, because it still is a very interesting fight, and even if both were in their prime, or even with Luis Ortiz being a bit older, one could still say that this is, a 50-50 fight. This is going to be a very interesting matchup. But I believe that Andrew Ruiz, in my opinion, will be the one who is throwing more. We all know that Luis Ortiz tends to be, with that Cuban style, a little bit more of a counter puncher. Not saying all in all that he cannot pressure his opponents, but when it comes down to it, he does prefer usually to be on the back foot and counter his opponents, or sometimes he'll be on the front foot as well. But I believe more than likely that Mr. Andrew Ruiz, that he's going to be the pressure fighter in this situation. I believe that more than likely he is going to outpoint Mr. Luis Ortiz. Could I see a knockout? I could, but I am going to go with unanimous decision by Mr. Andrew Ruiz. Now, once again, if this fight happened about 5 or 6 years earlier, could Luis Ortiz have won this fight? It's possible, because in my opinion, Luis Ortiz, Andrew Ruiz, Dillian White, Joseph Parker, all those top contenders from this generation, Joe Joyce, maybe a couple of others that I'm not mentioning, all those guys, in my opinion, are pretty much in a wash. It just is what it is. All those guys, in my view, would be very decent contenders for the day of the heavyweight division, but they would never truly be one of the top three guys within their division. It just is what it is. All right, well, I shouldn't say that. Andrew Ruiz at one point in time, of course, had the belt, so at least one point in time he would have been considered as one of the top guys, but not ever consistently. It just is what it is. But I believe Andrew Ruiz is going to win this fight. I believe that he is going to be the busier fighter. I believe all in all that he clearly is the younger fighter. And I just believe that not only is he more skilled as a fighter now, but I believe that he was always more skilled than that of a Luis Ortiz, especially after he beat AJ Anthony Joshua, and we got to truly see how decently skilled that he actually was, at least when he is at his best. Now, motivation and also keeping off the weight and staying in shape has been a problem with Mr. Andrew Ruiz Jr. in the past. So are we going to see an Andrew Ruiz that is very decently motivated? Or are we going to see Andrew Ruiz that maybe overall is not putting in his best work? Well, in my view, more than likely, at least from what I have seen, we're probably going to see the best version of Mr. Andrew Ruiz. Now, if I ended up seeing Luis King Kong Ortiz knock down Andrew Ruiz in the beginning of the fight, or if I ended up seeing, this fight, go to a split decision, or, even if Luis King Kong Ortiz won the fight, would I be very shocked? No, I wouldn't be shocked. Because, once again, this is still a very, very decently close fight. But this is a very interesting fight and an important fight in my view, because this is truly going to determine who is the better fighter. And is Luis Ortiz truly as decent of a fighter as overall a certain amount of people try to allege that he was? Because truth be told about Mr. Luis Ortiz, and some may say, well, that's not really fair. He's 43 years old. Yes, overall, but he did knock out Charles Martin in his last fight. But the truth is about Mr. Luis Ortiz, more than likely, we're never going to know his full true potential. And in my opinion, Luis Ortiz, even though he was decently talented, he was never one of the top five guys in the heavyweight division, or at least when you talk about Mr. Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, and then after that, you probably would have to have Mr. Andrew Ruiz. Ever since pretty much the Tyson Fury, AJ Deontay Wilder era, can we really put Luis Ortiz up in that category? I don't think so. Of course, he gave Deontay Wilder a very decent run for his money when it came down to it, but at the end of the day, you lost both of those fights. So it is what it is. And Mr. Andrew Ruiz, in my opinion, I believe that he would have even beat him several years ago. At least overall, had it been the version of Andrew Ruiz that I seen against AJ Anthony Joshua. Basically, what am I saying? If I see the best version of Luis Ortiz and the best version of Andrew Ruiz, I'm picking Andrew Ruiz usually to win the fight. Now, if this would have been a fight more 5 years ago, I would have had it more 50-50. But right now, I have to take a look at this fight, at least on the 60-40, 70-30 totem. I believe that Andrew Ruiz is going to win the fight, and I just believe that not only is he more skilled now, but I believe that he was always more skilled than Luis Ortiz. I just think that it took the opportunity against AJ Anthony Joshua for a lot of us to see it. But we'll see what happens, because Mr. Andrew Ruiz does have faults himself. He does not have very great footwork, in my opinion. His feet, a lot of the times, are planted into the ground like feet planted into cement. And oftentimes he does not cut off the ring extraordinarily well. We've seen that against Joseph Parker. We also seen that against Mr. Anthony Joshua in the rematch. So we'll see what happens here. But in my opinion, Luis Ortiz, he doesn't have the gas tank. And on top of that, I don't think that he has the skill set overall to consistently keep off Mr. Andrew Ruiz or outscore him throughout the fight. I don't think that he has the defense. I don't think he has the head movement. And I certainly don't believe that he has the gas tank. But I could be wrong. But anyways, that's really about it for my prediction on this fight. I have Mr. Andrew Ruiz Jr. by unanimous decision. I could be wrong, but we'll have to see what happens. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.